Hi, it's Gadget UK here again. As you can see, this time we're looking at an Amstrad GX4000. So this was the consolised version of the Amstrad CPC here. It's got more in common with the CPC Plus actually. It's got some sort of enhanced chipset on there. You know, you've got better scrolling, more colour support I think. So it's subtly higher spec than a standard 464. I think it's got 64K of memory though still. So we'll get this out of the box and I'll show you what's inside. So inside here you can see we've got the original polys, a little bit of damage there to one of the centre dividers. I can stick that back in, not a problem. So I've got a power supply that looks like an aftermarket one, yeah, Creative Electronic, yeah, whether that's going to be providing enough current, 80 milliamps, yeah, I suspect that's it's not going to provide enough current actually. Two controllers, and this is one of the things that appealed to me about this. Yeah, two controllers, and this one's still got the plastic cover. You know, you can just peel that back. It's like good as new. So yeah, I mean these sell typically for about £20 each generally. Those are quite cool. I also thought the artwork on these GX4000 carts were really bland. You know, just your black text there with this theme, you know, this band that probably, you know, they probably all have that on. You've got the manufacturer on the back there, Ocean. It's just a double layer board. Two chips in there. You've got your ROM chip, which in this case will be a mask ROM, and then there's the ASIC chip, which is kind of like a little custom ASIC type thing that acts as a sort of form of copy protection. We'll talk about that a bit later. And then as you can see I've got the original manuals with this and the GX4000. So this is described as faulty, not powering up. The previous power supply was swapped out after it failed. So looking at the ports here, 3.5mm audio socket there, joystick controller, analog input port I think for analog controllers, another joystick port there for player 2, light gun port there I think, and then around this side you'll notice we've got two power inputs. Now I can't remember which way around these are. One of them is for 5 volts if you power it from the monitor. Your monitor will power this, you know, you don't need to use a separate brick, but in our case we'll be using a separate brick and providing somewhere between 9 and 12 volts because it's got a 7805 in there. Your video output there, and you've also got SCART for video output as well. I'm not sure what the switch does here. It may change the channel there for the RF. And the only other things you've got on here is the power LED there, your on-off switch which locks the cart in. You know, it slides a little, can you see that? Slides that little pink thing out there to lock your cart in, and what I think is a pause/reset button. So yeah, as I said, this power supply is not up to the job and it's actually faulty. I've measured the voltage coming out of this, it's 0 volts. So multimeter on continuity, one probe over there on the shielding, and if we touch the centre pin, and if we touch the centre pin nothing, the bottom tab there, we've got a short. So it's not the centre pin, it's the outer. The outer is the ground, and it's the same on both of these actually. Centre pin nothing, the bottom tab there short. So yeah, these are centre positive. So give it a try now. Now I'm getting no video, but just listen. Hear that? Yeah, hopefully you can. So the thing is booting. It's just a question of why we're getting no video. Yeah, so I'm not getting any video out, so I need to remove the screws, and then you can see these 4 clips in the corner, and then it should you know, clip apart. So unclip to one side, just get your nails under the edge there and just pull the clip over. So that's one side done. I'll show you the same thing on this side. Like I say, nails on the inside, and then just pull the clip carefully over. Can you see that? And then the same up here. That's it. And then this should come off now. There we go. So I need to remove this. Is it just held on? Yeah, it just sits on there like that. So I'm guessing that's a factory mod up there with those 2 diodes. Yeah, there's 2 of those on each port there. Just need to disconnect this here by pulling it off, or you can just flip it over. Let's just flip it over like that temporarily. So we've got a Z80 over here. There's your AY sound chip, same in that you get in a CPC and a Spectrum Plus 2. That's our video encoder, so maybe we've got a problem with that. Sony's CXA1145P. Gate array. The common problem on these is the gate arrays fail, and what tends to happen is there's a diode that goes across the one of these voltage regulators here. There should be 2. I don't see where the second one is. I'm only seeing one at the moment, but I'm sure there's 2 voltage regulators on here, and there's a diode across between the input and the output, reverse biased. So if you get any negative spikes, it's designed to protect the system, but sometimes that shorts and you end up with like the input voltage, you know, if you're using like 9 or 12 volts or whatever here, that shorts through and can kill things. That's quite common on these. I've seen this before with dead gate arrays. And you've got 2 RAMs here, 4164 DRAMs. Somewhere on here there's a little DAC. I'm not sure where it is now. Yeah, you've got a standard 7.4 LS chip here, another one there. I'm not sure what that little chip is there. So you saw how it sound. The other thing I did here is just probe the pin, I think it's pin 20 on here, on the RGB SCART connector, parental connector here. Looking at the composite signal, and I could see that, but this cable was not switching the TV at all. Nothing was happening at all, no output from this cable. And then it suddenly dawned on me, I think you need the switching signal there. Now, because I was powering this with a 5 volt input, the connector down here, you're lacking the switching voltage there. The whole idea with this connector here, where you feed, I think normally 10 or 11 volts, you know, nearer to 8 or 9 is better. That feeds 2 things. It feeds the regulator to provide 5 volts, you know, it drops down from the input of 10 or 11 volts there to 5, but it also provides a 10 volt input, which goes to the switching pin on the SCART here. It's a bit crazy because you don't actually need 10 volts, you can do it with 5 volts. Now, maybe on older TVs you definitely needed nearer to 12, I don't know, I can't quite remember, but what I do know is with 5 volts you can have a resistor from 5 volts to the switching pin, and it will switch your TV. So I'd prefer to use a 10 volt power supply, if I'm completely honest, just because we're then using the 7805 to regulate the voltage. The power supply I've got outputs a bit more than 5 volts, it's like 5.3, it's because it's quite a beefy, it's like 3 amp power supply. So it's not really suitable for something like this. It powers it, and I've tested it. You can see I ran some fly leads off here, off the underneath of there, connected to a 9 volt power supply there, and that was working. So, you know, I mean, I could modify this. I could actually modify it so that the connection from the 5 volt side feeds to that 10 volt rail and disconnect where the 10 volt comes from over here. But that would then mean you've got a problem if you use the 10 volts. I mean, there's probably a way I can wire up either the 10 or the 5 to that connector so that they're isolated from each other. Yeah, so I think that all I'm lacking is actually a power supply. I don't think there's anything wrong with this at all. I think the fault with this was just simply that the power supply was broken, and whoever got a replacement power supply, that one wasn't up to the job. Yeah, and so the power supply they got would fit in the you know, the right socket there, but it's just not outputting anything. So I'm guessing, you know, the thermal fuse or something's blown inside this, or it's got a dodgy cable. I might just experiment actually, just to see if there's anything wrong with the cable. So I've got a block of heat sinks there on the gate array. A couple on the AY sound chip and 3 there on the Z80. That's all we need really. I mean, you know, so these are the parts here are off the shelf, I guess. I'm not too sure about that one down there. I can have a look at the schematics in a minute. I'll perhaps point out what that one is up here. This is the analog to digital converter here. That's an ADC, I think. Is it 4 bits? I think it is. You know, so there's not much on these. They're so simple. They really are simple boards. The main things that fail when you get that problem I described earlier, where one of these diodes here shorts, the one that it goes between the voltage in and voltage out. I'll perhaps stick an image of the schematics up there actually, just so you can see. But it goes across the voltage in, voltage out, and it shorts on some systems. And when it shorts, obviously you've got up to the input voltage going across into the 5 volt rail. That can kill your gate array, but I've seen instances where it kills the DRAM over here actually, and if you're lucky one of these will short out and suck that voltage down by a few volts. So instead of being 10 volts coming in, it might drop to 6 or 7 volts or something, and if your system's not powered for long periods of time in that way, you may find it's recoverable by, you know, fixing the diode and swapping out your DRAM. Yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say about these. I mean, you know, these do look like factory mods here. 2 diodes there, 2 diodes there. There was a transistor there that looks like that's been swapped out, but I'm guessing again that was some sort of factory defect or something that was spotted when testing at the factory. So I think I'll just reassemble this now and we'll have a play. I think the next thing I'm going to do actually is have a go at creating my own cart actually. It's a bit sacrilege. I'm not sure there's any screws there. I don't feel a screw. I'm guessing it's just clipped together. So if I'm careful, I might be able to, remove the shell without destroying the label. I just want the PCB. I'm going to take the PCB out, program an EEPROM, and I think a 27C020 should work. And we'll get a different game in here. Actually, I'll stick a socket so I can swap the chip out. And I'll keep the shell hopefully in one piece should I ever want to reassemble it. That diode I mentioned before that sometimes fails, it's this little one down here, and you can see it's pretty weedy actually. It might be an idea to uprate that while you're working on one of these. I might do that later, but just check into, say, the input of that regulator there. Hang on, continuity. See, we've got a short, and on the other side we don't have. That's good news. If we did have there, we'd have a problem with that diode. It would be failed. And on the other side, the output of the voltage regulator there, you can we've got a short. So yeah, that diode is kind of like reverse bias between the input and the output pin. So note, when you're putting this back on, it only goes one way up. If you look on the underside of here, you'll see the metallic strips here, and there's little marks that have correspond with the corners there. If you get it the wrong way around, you'll see these two holes here. They're blocked. You need to have it that way around, so that those two holes are free for the little notches that go on from the underside of the plastic case here. Those correspond there. So yeah, if you're careful, you can only get it back on the right way. Yeah, so my replacement power supply's arrived. Funnily enough, it looks like it's got the right connector actually. Just need to check the polarity of it, just to make sure the polarity's right. If not, I'll just chop this off. I can always use the original one we chopped off the cable there. It's got short leads on it, but I could just heat shrink them on and use that, I guess. But I'm thinking this might work. If the polarity's right, it should work. And on the replacement power supply there, you can see we've got just over 9 volts. That'll drop a bit with a bit of load. But the nearer you get to, say, I don't know, 7.5, 8 volts, the better, really. If you could get, an 8 volt power supply, that would be even better. 7 volts may work, 7.5 probably. The key really is, because you've got 7805 in there, it's having to drop the voltage above, say, 7.5 volts is burnt off, it's converted to heat there. So the lower you get it, the better really. But there does become a point where it won't operate. The 7805 has got like a minimum working voltage, and it's, I don't know, it's somewhere between 7 and 8 volts usually. So yeah, I'm going to be really naughty here, and I'm going to open this. We'll try and do it without damaging it if we can. I'm just not sure how easy it's going to be to be fair. But I've got no other way of testing software, because these cartridges, I was looking at burning rubber, and they're selling for like £40–50 now. Most of the games for the GX4000 are crazy prices. They seriously are. There must be a lot of people trying to collect for them. Now you can get like a flash cart. There's I've seen a 32-in-1 that someone's created. I had no idea what games to put on there. You can get an SD one that I've seen that doesn't seem to be manufactured at the moment. They did a limited run. I'm just not sure the best way to get inside it without destroying the label, because what I'd like to do is unclip it, just flip it over, pull the PCB out, so that I can always just put it back in again. That's the theory, and that's the plan. Yeah, so I got this in here like that there, slid down there, pulled it apart. You can see that one's come off. So if we take what we've learned from that side, we know that it wants to go like that there. It's just going to be the same on this side here. Yeah, these break when you go in there. There's no way of easily going inside one of these without damaging it, I don't think. Yeah, I've got in there. I haven't damaged the label, but you can see the little clips, they do break. There's no way of easily getting inside one of those without doing some damage. But I could always just put a tiny little dab of glue there and just stick that back together. It'd be okay. You would never know I've been in there. So I can now get the chip off here, solder that. You can see the acid chip there. Yeah, so that's kind of a bit similar to a CIC you get on a NES. It's outputting various things that if it doesn't, if the system doesn't get the expected response there, I think it messes up the RAM selection or something, the RAM decoding, something like that. It's quite clever the way it works. But that has been replicated. Someone's done that now in a CP. You can do it in an FPGA, I think, or a CPLD. So you can produce like a reproduction cart these days for this. So I'll get the chip off here now. I'll get a socket on, and I'll program up a couple of games on 27C020. I think that should work. Yeah, I think that's 128K that chip, isn't it? But I think it should support Maybe with the changed jumpers here, you can see those links. Might need to change one of those with the 256k chip, but we'll give it a go. We'll see what happens. So I'll perhaps just add a little bit of solder here before we remove it. We'll see what these are like. Sometimes you don't need to add solder. It does vary. I'll just use the solder pump here. Heat. Remove. Yeah, it's coming off pretty easy actually. It's not going to take too long to go around the connections here just to remove this chip. Go over that one a couple of times, I think. Yeah, it's coming off easy. Yeah, that chip pretty much fell off because you can see the single-sided, well, they're not single-sided, it's a double-sided board, but there are no pads on this side. All the pads are on that side for the ROM, so it is really easy to get that off there. I've had to do very little to get that off, so get the socket on, make sure you get it around the right way with regards to pin 1. The Xifos socket's better if you're planning on sticking chips in and out all the time, but I can always swap that out for a Xifos socket, maybe cut a hole in the cartridge shell or something. And I could just remove the socket and stick the original chip back on. And the interesting thing is it is an EEPROM, it's not a mask ROM. You know, it's a 27C1001, as you can see there. Yeah, so they did use EEPROMs on these. I'm sure some of them would have had mask ROMs on, but this particular one has got an EEPROM, strangely enough. So I'll just solder a couple of the corner points, then inspect the socket, make sure it's totally flat and straight. Yep, that's looking alright, I think. And then just make sure all the pins are through. Sometimes you get dodgy sockets, the one pin can get stuck and doesn't come through, so always inspect all your pins are through before you solder. So we'll go with the 27C020. So I've got 27C020 selected, and I'll choose to load the ROM, so we'll go with, there we go, gng.bin, that's 256k. I converted the .bin from the original .cpr using a utility called cpr to bin, which you can download from the CPC wiki. File information bin, leave the defaults. So that's it, there's our ROM. If we now select the program button, wait for that to complete, it'll do a verify as well, and it should just be a case of plugging that chip in, maybe changing a link. We'll try without changing the link to start with, and see what happens. Hopefully it should boot. And there we go, completed okay, verified okay. So just powered with a bench power supply at the moment. Sorry about that being over bright, but you can see we've got some corruptions at the top here. Now I just ruled out there being a problem with the board or connectivity by putting back the original ROM in there, burning rubber, and that works fine. So I do think we need to change one of the jumpers. Yeah, I think that's crashed because it's not addressing the ROM correctly. So let's give that a try. Oh yes, that's working fine. Sweet, totally sweet. I saw this game on, I think it was, is it Xifos? I can't remember his name. I'll stick his name on the top left there, I'll put a link to his channel. But he's a huge Amstrad fan. He's, in particular the GX4000. He's got pretty much every game on the GX4000 as far as I understand, apart from Chase HQ. But he covered this on his channel. There was a prototype about a year ago, I think, and it's evolved over the last month or so. It was ready for release, I think. There were a couple of bugs and the music wasn't that great actually. It was okay, it was pretty good, but it wasn't perfect. And a chap approached the developer and said, please let me do the music for it. And he agreed, and this is what we've ended up with. Fantastic soundtrack here. The bug's fixed, and it's got an ending screen now and stuff as well. You know, you can play this to the end, it's complete, it's the full game. Fantastic piece of homebrew, absolutely brilliant. So I mean, you know, you can check this out on an emulator, but I just really wanted to try this on actual hardware, and that was one of the reasons I went rushing out looking for a GX4000 actually, because it's one of my favourite games this. I do love the original arcade game. These things are a pain to kill. But yeah, it's really, really sweet. What a great port. So a simple swap out of the ROM there, and you can see we've got Batman. The interesting thing with this is it didn't fill the two blocks, it's 128k. And I accidentally programmed the 27C020 with the jumper still in place on the board, and it works. So I'm guessing that upper address bit must be staying low. Yeah, strictly speaking, if you're going to do that, if you're going to stick a 128k game on a 256k chip, just replicate it, copy and paste the whole ROM image so it's there twice. I can't remember where I'm going here. And we got Robocop as well. So I mean, I don't plan on creating loads of chips for this. And you can press the 5 buttons there to get cheats and things. You see that? That's quite cool. It's not got as much feature on this one actually. What they have done on some of the games is you've got the speech, like Chase HQ for example. It's a 512k ROM image, it's got all the levels loaded and it's got speech as well. So I might have a go at sticking that on a 040 chip. The problem there is you have to change the jumpers, I think. You'll need an additional jumper for the extra address line on the 040. I think I've got the cheat enabled here actually. Yeah, I have, I've got cheats enabled. I suspect we've got sound only come through one channel there actually. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the cable wasn't in right. Yeah, so the pads are only soldered on one side, so it's easy to get the socket off. But what I'm going to do is I've programmed up 27040, so that's 512k. In the bottom half of it, I put 2 copies of Burning Rubber. And in the upper 256k, second half of it, I've stuck Ghosts and Goblins. So the idea being this is going to be a dual game ROM. Now there's no easy way to switch. Well, there's a couple of things that spring to mind. What you could do is have a little flip-flop type thing, you know, a couple of transistors there, so that when the power's cycled, it kind of retains the state for a second or so. You know, so you could switch it off, switch it back on, and it would flip the upper bit. Switch it off, switch it on, it'd flip the upper bit again, you know, toggle it either on or off, depending on what it was before you powered it off. And then obviously it's powered off for a few seconds until the cap runs dry. That would drain it completely and go back to the first game every time. So, you know, always from a cold start, it would always be on Burning Rubber. But I don't really want to fit transistors and things in there. What I thought is I'm just going to use a little reed switch. I'll show you, hang on. Yeah, one of these little reed switches here. I'm going to stick it in that little cavity up there, like that. Just glue it in place. Have the wires coming out. Yeah, they shouldn't get trapped, hopefully. Yeah, there'll be enough room in there. So the wires will come out and down from that reed switch. One side will go to ground, and the other side will just go to the uppermost address pin, which I think is the 3rd pin down on this side. It's something like A17, I can't remember now. But it's the uppermost address pin. And then I tested it, put this little magnet on the top there, it sticks, it holds, you know, because the reed switch is on the inside, it goes click, and you switched over, so it'll just be a covert way of just changing the game over actually, and I'll stick a label on it just to indicate that I've done that, but it's, yeah, you can see that thing's so magnetic. It's just one way of doing it without interfering too much with the original cart and stuff, and it just means we've got the original game on there. That's the main thing, and I'll just have a covert way of being able to play Ghosts and Goblins. So the other thing I would point out here, you can see it's got the AMD logo though, the cross through it. I marked it with a cross because I thought it was faulty. I've got a bunch of these that won't blank check and they won't program. And I thought, I'm going to try it as a Toshiba. I've tried some of the different chip types, tried it as an ST, same thing, failure. Tried as a Toshiba, and lo and behold, it blank checked, and then it programmed, and it verified. Now prior to that, it would fail and fail and fail. You could do it dozens and dozens of times in a row, it'd fail every single time. At a specific point, just doing a blank check, whereas on the Toshiba, all 3 of these chips I've got that are marked AMD, they all work fine. So yeah, that's worth bearing in mind. So what I need to do now is the uppermost address bit on an 040 is this pin here. So we're just going to just carefully bend this out like that, and I'll probably cut the end of the leg off, and that's where we're going to solder our little switch, if you like. So one side of it, what I'm going to do is use a 10k resistor as a pull down, a weak pull down, so it'll go between this pin here and ground. So as default, they'll be looking at the lower half of the ROM there, which is Burning Rubber. That's the Burning Rubber image. And then the reed switch is going to go between VCC and this pin. So as soon as the reed switch is connected, it'll feed 5 volts in here. So there we go, there's our ROM soldered on. I don't need to cut this off because it's the front, there's enough space in here, so I can just, like I say, solder the wires and things on there without an issue. I think the next thing I'm going to do is add the 10k pull down. So ground, if memory serves, is the bottom pin here, pin 16. Yeah, it looks like it's going to this large area here, which is going to be ground. So I just need to, let's say, run a small wire all the way around here to a resistor that joins to this pin. So there we go, there's our weak 10k pull-up going round to the upper address pin there from ground. So it's a good idea to test that at that stage now before we add the toggle. In theory that should just now show burning rubber. And indeed it does. That's just working with burning rubber now. So if I do the next part of this now, stick the switch there, can seal it all, you know, package it back up inside the casing, and we can give it a test to see if it swaps over to the second game. So I think the next thing I'll do here is just clean up the PCB. So I'll just get some IPA, give it a good brush. You can see where I joined up that link there, LK4, and if you look at where it goes, it comes to a connection here that goes up to this third connection here, you know, so on an 020, that is the uppermost address line. And we'll just test our switch now we've bent the legs. Just get this magnet nearby. So yeah, it's a bit blue pizza this, absolutely. Probably the most blue pizza I've ever done actually. So we'll just get this, just get the switch in approximately the centre, as near as the centre we can get it. And then we'll just get a bit of hot glue around it. Should do on that side, a bit on this side. There we go. And if I try and get it above it, that little notch will help hold it in place. You know, if it does become unstuck, this little channel here, let's just try and get that hot glue off there. Yeah, this little channel in the middle will hold it. That'll do. So yeah, bit of a sticky mess, just let that dry now. We've still got the points available there to solder on to, that's the main thing. I've got hot glue stuck all over my hands here. It's a bit better. Try and fold it so it folds over there. Pull it into position. Should be it. And then let's carefully just reassemble this now. There we go, there's our card back together. Let's go and plug it in and give it a try. So as you can hear, the game's working. I'm guessing it would crash if I do this. Yeah, the interesting thing is, can you see where it's stuck? It flipped around there, I'd switch it off and on. But as you will see, Ghosts and Goblins is up. So yeah, totally crazy. I'm sure I'm going to get a few thumbs down for that. But I don't care, it's a nice covert way, let's say, of not, you know, making the appearance of the cart look okay. It looks like I've not interfered with it at all. The key really is just be careful with those clips. I was lucky I didn't break them all because it went back together okay. So I stuck a couple of stickers on the back here, one showing 9 volts sensor positive, and then just an X covering that port there, just because it'd be super easy, you know, when you've got your cables and things with your multiple consoles, to accidentally plug a Mega Drive connector or something in there. And it's a bit like on the CPC where, you know, you put 5 volts in there, it's not regulated, it's, you know, you're at the mercy of whatever you're sticking in. Whereas at least with this, if you were stuck, you know, 12 volts or something in there, it's still regulated, you know, it's not the end of the world, it's not going to die instantly. I mean, there's no reverse polarity protection as far as I can see. There might be, I don't think there is. I think they just go straight into the 7805 there. So, you know, that's a possible mod. You know, I did wonder about that. I did think about sticking a diode and a fuse in there. I might do that in a later video, I don't know, it's not absolutely essential. So the next thing I'm going to do is just give this a wipe down. It's got bits of dirt and stuff on it, but it's fairly clean actually. It doesn't need a lot of work, it's just some dirty marks there. And they just came off with a bit of soap and water actually. I mean, you can see, you know, the dirt's coming off there. There's a bit down here, let's just see if we can tackle that. It's quite an unusual shape, the GX4000 case. You know, I mean, you know, credit to Amstrad for going for a bit of a daring design there with the case. You know, they're trying to make it look sort of futuristic and spaceship-ish, and I think they totally achieved that. This system could have been a great system, I think. You know, when I look at the capabilities, when we look at that Ghosts and Goblins we've been playing, it's that's a very, very good game. It really showcases what the system was capable of. So the GX4000 was similar in some ways to the games system from Commodore, you know, the 64GS or whatever it was called. You know, the whole idea of a consolised version of that 8-bit micro that had already had so much success globally. So at least with the GX4000, you had some additional functionality that that was built in here. They didn't just do what Commodore did and just take they took the C64 and stuck it into a case with a cartridge port, and that was it. At least with this, there was some differences, some enhancements that made this more appealing, I guess, and it's perhaps more appealing today than it was back in the day, just because back in the day when this was released, there was just hardly any software for it. It really didn't get any much in the way of love. But as you've seen with Ghosts and Goblins there, that's absolutely fantastic, you know, and all of the popular games for the CPC have been ported to a ROM format that which will work with this. You know, people have modified it to fix any issues there, because there are some incompatibilities that's worth just focusing on a little bit. The ASIC, you know, the main ASIC we saw in there, it comprises of some RAM management stuff. You've got the 8255. It replicates the original gate array that's in a CPC, and the 6845 video chip there, the CRTC. So all that functionality is embedded within that gate array, including some additional features. You get an extended colour palette, so it can do more colours. You've got hardware sprites and hardware scrolling. You know, smooth hardware scrolling. You never had that with the original CPC. So those are the nice additional features they threw into that gate array. You know, into the system here, that kind of could have made this stand out on its own two legs, kind of thing, as a separate system. This, I think, if this had been released around the time the NES was around, this could have done really, really well. Actually, I could have imagined a lot of developers, you're not only producing software for the NES and the Famicom, would have perhaps ported to this, because it's kind of a similar playing field, if not even better, slightly better. So it's just a shame, really. It's the timing thing again. Amstrad made the same mistake that Commodore made, of thinking that they wanted a piece of the console market. Let's just stick our existing functionality in a box with a cart slot. Yeah, Amstrad did a bit more, but it still wasn't enough. It was too late in the day to take that as an approach. You know, had they gone with a 16-bit architecture for this, again, it could have done really well. And before I forget, coming back to the gate array, the 6845, as I say, is replicated there, and the other stuff, the standard gate array you get on a CPC. And because of the way they've implemented it, they've cherry-picked, if you like, the specific bits of functionality, and it's not an exact one-to-one copy of those same chips in the CPC. So there's some subtle differences there, actually, that can cause a few incompatibilities. But developers can hack some of the old CPC games and modify them to work around those differences there. And if you get one of those C4 CPC carts, which I'll probably get at some point in future, probably next month, you'll see that there's a very large library of games from the CPC that have been ported to run on this system. So all cleaned up there, the mucky marks have come off it. I mean, to be fair, it's hardly had any use, which doesn't surprise me, because as I mentioned at the start, there's not a massive library of games for these. I'm sorry there wasn't much to show you in this video. I mean, the main thing is we got it working. It was a really good pickup for me, because it was £40 actually, and I got 2 controllers and a game. The game tends to sell for between £20 and £40 on its own. The controllers, again, at least £20 each generally, and these are pristine. They're good as new. One of them still got the plastic on, as I showed, and the polys and the instructions and everything really. The only thing it didn't have was the original power supply, but the original power supplies are a source of failure on these, so yeah, I would have been swapping that out anyway. I'd like to be able to show you something interesting by modifying this cart here. Yeah, it's a total gimmick doing this. It would have made more sense to have a switch on it, or do what I suggested earlier, which I will do in a later video on a different cart for a different system, where you can just cycle the power fairly quickly and it will flip the upper bit there. You can do that, it's not that hard to do, but I thought it was just useful to show you something different. And it does mean, like I say, it's almost stock. It's got the original game on there. I could remove those labels from the back and you'd never know, or you can just lob the magnet on there and you're into Ghosts and Goblins. Anyway, hopefully you found that interesting. Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.